Brianna Joy Gray is going around liking these tweets, playing defense for the anti-student relief crowd. I'm a conservative, and Bri Joy is absolutely correct. The elites, including liberals, are fighting like hell against partial student loan forgiveness, but where were they during 2008? Wait. The elites, including liberals, are fighting like hell against partial student loan forgiveness. Who was the person who proposed and implemented the student loan forgiveness? It was the president, who is a liberal. What about the 2008? Okay. There's so little to say sometimes, except brain damage. Right? You know I'm right. How can anyone be an honest political actor and not be extremely ableist? Because at the end of the day, like 90% of the political shit going on right now is just brain damage. It's not like we're disagreeing over some interpretation of nuanced data or whatever. It's just brain damage. I don't know what else, what am I supposed to say? Oh god. Oh, by the way, general rule, okay? Lefties who make blanket statements about the 2008 bailout generally have no fucking idea what it was or how it went down. I've noticed a lot of soup brain takes in that particular issue. The 2008 financial crash was an economic catastrophe, which in any sane world would have led to like hundreds of CEOs being sent to the fucking gulags. In any sane world, like everyone responsible for the prime mortgage loan packaging would have been immediately sent to a camp with a gigantic rock in the middle and told to keep chipping at it until it's sand. In any good world. But that's not the world we live in, and that's not the system that we exist within. And what Obama did, broadly speaking, the whole bailout thing, had to happen. Anyone who disagrees with that is, I'm not going to say dumb because it's a complicated issue, but the consequences of not bailing out the corpos back then would have led to like catastrophic damage for the proletariat too. Like it's like the institutions that had to be bailed out are like the foundations of our economy, and it fucking sucks that they're corrupt and we had to like spend so much money keeping them afloat. But if we just let them collapse, like everyone on that would have fallen. And by the way, the rich would have been fine. Like if they hadn't been bailed out, all those CEOs would have been fine. Millions of American workers would have like been on the streets starving to death. Okay. So the bailout, like again, it's indicative of huge social issues, wasn't done perfectly, etc., etc. However, like it did need to happen given the conditions that were present at the time. They were also loans, keep that in mind. They have been paid back with interest. Technically, the government made a profit on the 2008 bailout. Obama didn't get in until 2009. Yeah, but he's the one who authored the bailout. That weren't paid back? No, a lot of them were paid back, weren't they? I don't think all of them were paid back, but a lot of them were. Hold on. How much of the 2008 bailout loans were paid back? Oh god, why did I Google this? There are numbers here. I think I'm looking at the wrong article right now. Vaush, the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, often called the Bank Bailout of 2008, was proposed by Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson, passed by the 110th United States Congress, and signed into law by President George W. Bush. Wait, weren't there a couple of bills? I'm pretty sure the majority of the bailouts were authored by Obama, were they not? Am I totally wrong on that? The Recovery Act. How much did the Recovery Act cover? How large was the 2009 Recovery Act? God, why can't they just give me a money amount? Apparently most of the loans were paid back. Yeah, that's what I'd heard. Okay, here, PolitiFact. Sorry, this is a bit of a divergence. TARP was Bush, $400 billion about. 400 Oh, wait, so was it like 50-50? 4 years have passed. The Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, which created the TARP, initially offered up to $700 billion to banks, auto companies, insurance agencies, and mortgage lenders. Lawmakers distributed $466 billion according to that total, and of that total, $370 billion had been returned, including $41.9 billion from interest and dividends. TARP's bank programs have already earned a significant profit for taxpayers, but that doesn't mean they paid back the full. But this article is pretty old, right? Wait, what was the total dollar amount for the Recovery Act? Soda! Obama. The approximate cost of the economic stimulus package was estimated to be $787 billion by the time of passage, later revised to $831 billion between 2009 and 2019. Oh! Okay, wait. I think I have it now. I'm sorry. I think I made a mistake. There were multiple acts, but the majority of the money was authorized to be distributed to these institutions under Bush, but the Obama administration oversaw it because the distribution was handled by federal agencies that Obama took over in 2009, meaning that even though the bill was put forward by Bush, Obama was the architect of its enactment for the most part. Is that correct? I think that's correct. Well, none of this changes the initial stuff I said about it being unfortunately necessary. But okay, all right, that's a bit of nuance that I either didn't know or forgot about. All right, well, yeah, wait. So how much of the debt has been repaid as of now? Because this article is from 2012. Let's see. 2008 bailout payback. The bailout was 11 years ago. We're still tracking every penny. Over a decade ago, we started a database to track TARP, the 2008 bailout of the financial system. It turned out bailouts are forever. We're still updating the damn thing, so recently we decided to give it a makeover. What? Don't you get fancy with me. I just want to see numbers on how much has been paid back. Oy, oy, oy. All right, well, maybe I can look into it a little bit in the future. My initial point stands. Earnings back. So many of these articles are ancient. Read the article, Lamau. But what if it's boring? What if it ends up being the wrong article? You don't know how hard it is to be a streamer. Wait, why don't I just look at the Wikipedia article? I'm so stupid. Of course they would include that. Wikipedia, 2008, bailout. Oh, for crying out loud. Oh, yoy. All right. Tax provisions affects the national debt. Where is the payback? Hey, batter, swing. Here, projects ProPublica bailout. Bailout tracker. I knew there had to be something like this. State of the bailout. Outflows. See, this is what I wanted. Why was it so hard to find this? Outflows, $234.8 billion. That is a lot of money. Wow, Fannie and Freddie getting $500 billion. Crazy. Inflows. Money returned and paid to Treasury as interest, dividends, fees, or to repurchase their stock warrants. In refunds and revenue, it looks like there's been $109 billion profit. Is that adjusted for inflation, though? Because if you loan out $1 billion in 2008 and it gets paid back eventually by 2018, you did still lose money on that because the value of the currency is decreased. Either way, what the fuck is Fannie and Freddie? Well, this is a joint corporate effort. The Freddie Fazbear's Pizzeria, did really well in the 80s and 90s, so they opened up a bank chain. That's why they needed so much money. It's because they're buried in lawsuits because kids keep disappearing. Vaush, if the bailout was so necessary, why not turn it into a nationalization program to eventually redistribute unions? I know that, sounds good, and I do think that a strong case can be made for nationalizing giant industries that are too big to fail, but also have, fucked themselves over and America over that badly. But I don't know what your question is. Essentially, what you're asking me is, if this good thing was necessary, then why not do a better thing? I mean, I don't know. I guess it is cool if they would do a better thing. But even if they nationalized those institutions, they still would have had to bail them out. If the government nationalized these failing businesses, they would have assumed the debts those institutions held, and they would have had to pay them back anyway. Unless you'd want the United States government to default on that debt, but that would cause a whole other economic crisis. No, I know Fannie and Freddie are fucked up. Yeah, that econ shit. I'm not at all against nationalization, but it has to be done in the right ways. The last thing that you guys want is the government to nationalize an industry and then for that industry to get worse. That does not make socialists look very good. if there's like a private institution that's doing all right, and then the government takes it over and instantly it. And keep in mind, by the way, that if the government ever nationalizes a program, right-wing media internationally is going to be shit talking it. All the far right pundits, everyone, even neoliberals, like everyone who isn't like Bernie Sanders tier, is going to try to tear it down because it represents a challenged corporate hegemony. So so a nationalized industry doesn't just need to be as good as what it's taking over. It needs to be so much better that the public can't deny it, in spite of manufactured consent, pressing against it. It needs to be like this overwhelming victory, which is pretty tough to do, you know. It's not easy. God willing, a long enough timeline, Econo Boy, people who even mention sovereign wealth funds will be immediately executed for reactionary thought. Vaush, why do you think there aren't any good examples of proper socialism? Well, there just aren't. There are no examples of a state, and in socialism, that's a state, of a state where the means of production are controlled by the workers and who have decommodified industry. That it just has not happened. Now, there are elements of governments, around the world that have done things that I think are like, socialist in nature. There have been policies implemented and institutions that have, that are in the ballpark, certainly. But it's never really existed. While the U.S. has actively prevented it in many places. Oh yeah, sure. Well, I'm not saying that it can't work. I'm just saying it hasn't happened. It took thousands of years for democracy to actually properly take off. It was conceptualized in the BC era, I mean, these things take time. Focus less on whether or not something technically meets the perfect definition of socialism, I think, and focus more on, like, are socialist principles and values inspiring this system or this institution or whatever? Is this policy, like, is it in line? Is it in the direction we want? We're never going to get everything we want. Nobody does. But we can, push in the right direction. Do you support reinstating Glass-Steagall? Yeah. Easy clap. So being incrementalist is better than nothing. On a long enough timeline, everyone is incrementalist, Lenin did a revolution, and then what happened after he took power? Incremental reform, often ones I disagreed with. On a long enough timeline, incrementalism is the only thing you can do, because it's just not possible to do gigantic radical changes like every time something needs to change. You got to work it out. You got to dip your toe in the water, make sure it's the right temperature, etc., etc.